Breaking news from Capitol Hill, where former CDC Director Dr. Susan Monarez just delivered what can only be described as a devastating takedown of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., revealing shocking details about her 29-day tenure that ended when she refused to rubber stamp vaccine recommendations regardless of scientific evidence. In explosive testimony before the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, Monarez systematically dismantled the official narrative about her firing, calling out Kennedy for demanding she abandon basic scientific standards and ethics in her role as the nation's top public health official. "My tenure as CDC director lasted 29 days," Monarez told stunned senators. "Since my removal, several explanations have been offered: that I told the secretary I would resign, that I was not aligned with administration priorities, or that I was untrustworthy. None of those reflect what actually happened. What actually happened, according to Monarez, was a direct assault on scientific integrity at the highest levels of government." She revealed that on August 25th, Kennedy made two demands that she called inconsistent with my oath of office and the ethics required of a public official. The first demand was staggering in its brazenness. Kennedy directed me to commit in advance to approving every ACIP recommendation regardless of scientific evidence, Monarez testified, referring to the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices that develops vaccine guidance. Think about what this means. The health secretary was demanding that the CDC director pre-approve vaccine recommendations without even looking at the science. The second demand was equally disturbing. Kennedy directed me to dismiss career officials responsible for vaccine policy without cause, Monarez revealed. This wasn't about performance or competence. Kennedy wanted her to fire experienced public health professionals simply because they might not align with his anti-vaccine ideology. When Monarez responded that she couldn't pre-approve recommendations without examining scientific evidence, Kennedy's reaction was swift and threatening. He told her he had already spoken with the White House several times about having me removed. This testimony exposes the true nature of what's happening at our nation's top health agencies. We're not talking about policy disagreements or administrative disputes. This is about a health secretary demanding that the nation's top epidemiologists abandon scientific methodology and rubber stamp decisions based on political ideology rather than public health evidence. The timeline Monarez laid out is particularly damning. Her troubles began almost immediately when she learned from media reports on August 2nd that Kennedy had already fired medical experts serving on the Vaccine Advisory Committee. She wasn't even consulted about removing the very scientists whose expertise the CDC relies on for vaccine guidance. This pattern of bypassing scientific expertise continued throughout her brief tenure. Kennedy wasn't just making policy. He was systematically dismantling the scientific infrastructure that has protected American public health for decades. Monarez's account directly contradicts Kennedy's previous testimony to Congress, where he admitted firing her but provided different reasons. During his own grilling by lawmakers earlier this month, Kennedy claimed various justifications for the firing, but Monarez's testimony reveals these were cover stories for his real motivation: her refusal to abandon scientific standards. The broader implications are terrifying. If the health secretary can demand that CDC directors pre-approve vaccine recommendations without scientific review, what does that mean for public health during the next pandemic? What happens when political loyalty becomes more important than epidemiological evidence? Monarez's firing wasn't an isolated incident. She revealed that other top CDC employees soon followed her out the door after she was removed. We're witnessing a systematic purge of experienced public health professionals who won't compromise their scientific integrity for political purposes. The timing of this testimony is crucial as we head into flu season and continue dealing with ongoing public health challenges. The CDC is supposed to be our nation's premier health protection agency, staffed by scientists who follow evidence wherever it leads. Instead, we're seeing it transformed into a political operation where loyalty trumps expertise. Kennedy's demands that Monarez described, pre-approving recommendations without evidence and firing career officials without cause, represent a fundamental corruption of the scientific process. This isn't about being pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. It's about whether our public health decisions will be based on evidence or ideology. Monarez's courage in speaking out cannot be overstated. She chose to sacrifice her career rather than compromise the scientific integrity that protects American families. Her 29-day tenure may have been brief, but her testimony today could be the wake-up call that saves our public health system from complete politicization. This story is still developing as senators digest the full implications of Monarez's testimony. But one thing is already clear. We now have a detailed account from the nation's former top health official about how scientific standards are being systematically dismantled from within. The question is whether Congress will act to protect public health from political interference, or whether we'll continue down this dangerous path where ideology matters more than evidence.